The church bells tolled ominously as the casket draped in the American flag was lowered into the ground. Colonel Harlan Reeves stood rigid, his uniform crisp, eyes dry behind aviator sunglasses, convinced his only son, Captain Ethan Reeves, had died a hero in the line of duty in Afghanistan. But as the final salute echoed, a tall man in a black suit rose from the back row, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "Ethan wasn't just a soldier. He was my husband." Harlan's world shattered in that instant. The mourners gasped, whispers rippling like wildfire through the crowd of military brass. Family, friends, and distant relatives gathered at Arlington National Cemetery. Ethan's mother, Margaret, clutched her pearls, her face paling as if she'd seen a ghost. Harlan turned slowly, his jaw clenched, staring at the stranger who dared to claim his son in such a way. Who was this man? And how could Ethan, the golden boy raised in a strict Southern Baptist home in Virginia, have hidden something so profound? The man, introducing himself as Dr. Conrad Rivera, a surgeon from New York, approached the podium uninvited. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes burned with resolve. "I loved Ethan for 5 years," Conrad said, his voice steady despite the hostile glares. "We married in secret 2 years ago in Massachusetts." He didn't want to disappoint you, Colonel, but he couldn't live a lie anymore. Harlan felt a surge of rage boil inside him. Betrayal from beyond the grave. His son, the one he'd groomed for greatness, West Point graduate, decorated officer, gay, married? It was impossible, a smear on the family name. As the service dissolved into chaos, Harlan stormed off, ignoring Margaret's pleas to stay. He drove aimlessly through the D.C. traffic, memories flooding back. Ethan as a boy, playing football in the backyard, always the obedient son. Harlan had pushed him hard. Reeves' men served their country, no excuses. Ethan's deployments had been a source of pride, but now Harlan wondered about the letters home, always vague about personal life. Had there been signs? The way Ethan avoided talk of girlfriends, the extended leaves in New York that Harlan dismissed as R&R. That night, in their colonial home in Conradandria, Harlan confronted Margaret. "Did you know?" he barked, pacing the living room lined with military memorabilia. She shook her head, tears streaming. "He was our boy, Harlan. Maybe we didn't see because we didn't want to." But Harlan refused to accept it. "This Rivera is a liar, probably after the benefits or some scam." He vowed to dig into Conrad's background, protect Ethan's legacy. Little did he know, this revelation was just the tip of an iceberg of secrets that would force him to question everything he believed about family, duty, and love. Conrad, meanwhile, returned to his empty Manhattan apartment, collapsing onto the couch where he and Ethan had shared countless nights. The pain of loss was raw, amplified by the public outing. He'd promised Ethan he'd stay silent, but at the funeral, seeing the sanitized version of Ethan's life eulogized, hero, patriot, but never lover, something snapped. "I have to honor you fully," Conrad whispered to a photo of them on their wedding day, hidden in a drawer. Ethan had been torn between worlds. The military's don't ask, don't tell hangover and a family steeped in tradition. Their love had been a sanctuary, stolen weekends, whispered vows. But now Conrad faced the fallout alone. The next day, Harlan hired a private investigator, an old army buddy named Frank. "Find dirt on this Rivera," he instructed. Frank's report came swiftly. Conrad was legitimate, a respected trauma surgeon at Mount Sinai, no criminal record, but photos emerged of him and Ethan together at pride events, vacations in the Hamptons. Harlan stared at the images, his stomach churning. Ethan looked happy, freer than Harlan ever remembered. Doubt crept in, but he pushed it away. This changes nothing. Ethan's service record stands. Margaret, however, began to unravel. She found an old journal of Ethan's from high school, hidden in the attic. Entries spoke of confusion, crushes on boys, fear of disappointing dad. "I have to be the son he wants," one page read. She confronted Harlan that evening. "We pushed him into a mold, Harlan. Maybe that's why he hid." He exploded. Don't you dare blame me. I gave him everything, a path to honor. But deep down, the words stung, awakening memories of his own rigid father, a World War II vet who never showed affection. Conrad received a call from Ethan's unit commander, Major Lisa Grant. The colonel's making waves, questioning the marriage's validity for survivor benefits. Conrad sighed. He didn't care about the money, but the erasure hurt. He decided to reach out to Margaret, sending a letter with photos and mementos. Ethan loved you both. He wanted peace. When Margaret read it, she wept, seeing her son's joy in those snapshots. She called Conrad secretly, her voice tentative. Tell me about him, the real him. Their conversation lasted hours. Conrad shared stories. Ethan's laughter at bad movies, his passion for justice that led him to volunteer at LGBTQ shelters during leaves. Margaret listened, her heart breaking and mending simultaneously. He was afraid of losing us, she admitted. Conrad nodded over the phone. We all were. This alliance, fragile as it was, set the stage for deeper conflicts. Harlan discovered the call logs, feeling betrayed by his own wife. You're siding with that man? He accused. Margaret stood firm for the first time. I'm siding with our son. As tensions mounted, Harlan attended a veterans group meeting, where whispers about Ethan's scandal circulated. One old-timer clapped him on the back. Don't let it tarnish the boy's memory. But another, a younger vet, pulled him aside. Times are changing, Colonel. Love is love. Harlan bristled, but the seed was planted. That night, alone in his study, he pulled out Ethan's Purple Heart, turning it over in his hands. What price had Ethan paid for silence? Harlan's investigation deepened, leading him to Ethan's old barracks in Fort Bragg. He met with Ethan's platoon sergeant, a burly man named Ramirez, who shifted uncomfortably. Captain Reeves was the best, sir. Saved my life once. But when pressed about personal life, Ramirez hesitated. He kept to himself. But there were rumors, letters from New York. Harlan's fists clenched. Even in the ranks, Ethan had hidden. Back home, Margaret invited Conrad to Virginia under the guise of collecting Ethan's belongings. Harlan was away at a conference, or so she thought. Conrad arrived nervously, carrying a box of Ethan's journals and letters. The house felt like a museum to a life unlived. Trophies, flags, no trace of romance. Margaret brewed coffee, her hands shaking. Show me more, she said. Conrad pulled out a video from their wedding. Ethan in a tux, beaming as they exchanged rings in a quiet chapel. I, Ethan, take you, Conrad, in sickness and in health. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. He looks so happy. Their talk turned to Ethan's struggles. Conrad recounted how Ethan had come out to him during a chance meeting at a medical conference. He was deployed soon after, but we wrote every day. Margaret confessed her own regrets. I saw the signs in college, but Harlan, he's from a different era. As they bonded over shared grief, the front door slammed. Harlan had returned early, suspicious. What the hell is he doing here? He roared. The confrontation was explosive. Harlan accused Conrad of manipulation. You turned my son. Conrad stood tall. Ethan was who he was long before me. He loved you, but your expectations suffocated him. Margaret intervened. Harlan, listen to him. Betrayed, Harlan stormed out, driving to a bar where he drowned his anger in whiskey. Flashes of Ethan's childhood haunted him, scolding the boy for soft interests like art, pushing sports and ROTC. Had he created this divide? Conrad stayed the night at Margaret's insistence, sleeping in Ethan's old room. He found a hidden letter under the mattress, addressed to his parents. Mom, Dad, I'm gay. I hope one day you'll understand. Dated 10 years ago, never sent. Conrad showed it to Margaret the next morning. He tried, she whispered. They decided to confront Harlan together, but he was already plotting. He'd contacted a lawyer to contest the marriage, citing military regulations. Word spread in their conservative community. Neighbors whispered at church. Old friends distanced themselves. Margaret faced judgment at her book club. How could you not know? She defended fiercely. Because we taught him to hide. This awakening cost her friendships, but gained her resolve. Conrad, back in New York, dealt with his own backlash, colleagues supportive but patients occasionally requesting transfers. Bigotry doesn't stop at the hors d'oeuvres, he told a friend. Harlan met with the lawyer, a sharp-suited man in D.C. We can argue the marriage was invalid under DDT remnants or claim duress. But as Harlan signed papers, guilt gnawed. He visited Ethan's grave alone, kneeling in the grass. Why didn't you tell me, son? The silence was deafening. That evening, he found Margaret packing. I'm going to New York to learn more about Ethan's life, she said defiantly. Harlan begged her to stay. We're a family, she replied. Were we ever, if he couldn't be himself? The separation hit Harlan hard. Alone, he pored over the photos Conrad left. One showed Ethan at a protest for marriage equality. Sign reading "Love Wins." Harlan recalled dismissing such movements as liberal nonsense. Now it stared back as his son's truth. He called Frank for more intel, but Frank refused. Colonel, this ain't dirt. It's a man's life. Harlan hung up, isolated. Conrad and Margaret met in Central Park, walking paths Ethan loved. She asked about their daily life. We dreamed of a house in the suburbs, adopting kids. Margaret's heart ached for what could have been. But news of Harlan's lawsuit reached them. Conrad was furious. He's erasing us. Margaret promised to talk him down. Harlan's conference speech on military valor felt hollow. Audience questions turned personal. How do you reconcile your son's orientation with your values? He stumbled, admitting privately later, I don't know. This vulnerability led to a call with a therapist and old VA contact. Repression breeds pain, the doc said. Harlan resisted, but agreed to one session. As Margaret returned, Harlan greeted her with unexpected softness. I read the letter. They talked late into the night, tears flowing. I was wrong, he admitted partially, but the lawsuit loomed a decision point. Would he drop it or double down? The lawsuit proceedings began in a sterile D.C. courtroom. Harlan versus Conrad over Ethan's estate and benefits. Harlan sat stoically, his lawyer arguing. The marriage was concealed, potentially fraudulent. Conrad, represented pro bono by an LGBTQ rights firm, countered with documents. Marriage certificate, joint bank accounts, Ethan's will naming Conrad beneficiary. The judge, a stern woman, eyed Harlan. This seems more about denial than law. During a recess, Conrad approached Harlan in the hallway. This isn't what Ethan wanted. Harlan snapped. You don't speak for him. But Margaret, attending against Harlan's wishes, pulled him aside. Look at the evidence. It's real. Harlan glanced at Conrad, seeing grief mirroring his own. For the first time, empathy flickered. Testimonies revealed more. Ethan's CO testified. He was exemplary, but the stress of hiding took a toll. A fellow soldier shared. He confided in me once, said his dad would disown him. Harlan winced, realizing his words had echoed. Reeves' men don't back down. Conrad took the stand, voice breaking. Ethan died saving lives, but lived in fear. Don't let that be his legacy. The media caught wind, headlines blaring. War hero's secret gay marriage sparks family feud. Protests formed outside. Supporters with rainbow flags. Opponents with signs decrying moral decay. Harlan's phone rang off the hook. Old comrades condemned him. Others praised his stand. The pressure mounted, sleep evading him. Nightmares plagued. Ethan calling out, Dad, accept me. Margaret organized a family intervention with Ethan's aunt and uncle, long-estranged liberals. Harlan, you're hurting everyone, Aunt Clara said. He lashed out. This isn't our values. But Uncle Tom shared his own story. I lost a friend to suicide over this. Don't lose your son's memory. Harlan stormed out, but the words lingered. Conrad faced his own demons. At work, a bigoted board member pushed for his suspension. Distraction to the hospital. Conrad fought back. rallying colleagues. My marriage doesn't affect my scalpel. He won, but the battle exhausted him. A late-night call from Margaret. Harlan's wavering. Conrad hoped, but prepared for war. In court, Harlan's turned to testify. He started strong. My son was a patriot first, but under cross-examination, shown love letters. Conrad, you're my home. Harlan choked up. I didn't know. The judge adjourned, sensing the shift. Post-hearing, Harlan visited a support group for parents of LGBTQ kids. Anonymous, he listened to stories of rejection and reconciliation. One father shared, I lost years with my son. Don't make my mistake. Harlan left shaken, calling Margaret. Help me understand. They attended a PFLAG meeting together. Stories of youth disowned, suicides. Harlan saw parallels to Ethan's hidden pain. A young man spoke. Coming out is terrifying when family's against you. Harlan realized his tough love had been a barrier. Conrad received an unexpected email from Harlan. Meet me at the cemetery. They stood by the grave, silence heavy. Harlan spoke first. Why him? Why you? Conrad. Because he saw in me what you never allowed, freedom to love. Harlan admitted. I was afraid. Of change, of judgment. Conrad extended a hand. Ethan wanted unity. The lawsuit dropped the next day. Harlan announced it publicly. My son's love was as heroic as his service. Backlash came, disinvites from events, but support too. Margaret beamed. Proud of you. Yet healing was slow. Harlan joined therapy, unpacking generations of repression. Conrad invited them to New York for Ethan's birthday memorial. They toured his life. Favorite cafe, hospital where he volunteered. Harlan saw Ethan's impact beyond uniform. A family dinner sealed it. Toasts to Ethan, stories shared. Harlan raised his glass. To love in all forms. But shadows remained, lost time, what-ifs. With the lawsuit behind them, Harlan dove into advocacy, speaking at veterans forums on LGBTQ inclusion. I was blind, he confessed in one panel. Applause mixed with boos, but progress felt tangible. Yet personal demons persisted. He dreamed of Ethan's last deployment, wondering if stress contributed to the ambush that killed him. Margaret flourished, volunteering at LGBTQ centers. For Ethan, she said. She and Conrad bonded like family, sharing holidays. Conrad introduced his circle. Friends who'd supported their secret life. One, a therapist named Jamie, noted Harlan's progress. It's rare to see such change, but society pushed back. Harlan's old club revoked membership. Doesn't align with our values. He shrugged. Their loss. At home, he reframed the living room, added wedding photos beside medals. Neighbors gossiped, but some warmed. A young couple down the street came out, inspired. Conrad struggled with moving on. Dating felt like betrayal. A colleague set him up, but it fizzled. Ethan's shadow is long, he admitted to Margaret. She encouraged, he'd want your happiness. A bombshell hit. Ethan's journal, found in storage, detailed a near-suicide in college after Harlan's homophobic rant at dinner. Dad's words cut deep. Harlan read it alone, sobbing. I almost lost him earlier. This fueled deeper introspection. He wrote apologies to Ethan, burning them at the grave as catharsis. Family dynamics shifted. Ethan's cousin, Sarah, visited, revealing she'd known. He swore me to secrecy. Harlan hugged her. No more secrets. They planned a foundation in Ethan's name for LGBTQ vets. Conrad faced a career crossroads. Offered a position in D.C. closer to the Reeves. Tempting, he told Harlan over coffee. Harlan encouraged, join us. Conrad accepted, relocating. The move symbolized unity. But conflict arose when Harlan's brother, Uncle Ray, a fire and brimstone preacher, disowned him. You're condoning sin. Family reunion turned ugly. Ray confronted, Ethan's in hell. Harlan stood firm. Love isn't sin. Ray left, severing ties. The loss hurt, echoing Ethan's fears. Margaret mediated, but Ray was unyielding. Harlan reflected on his own past prejudices, vowing not to repeat. Conrad's new life in D.C. brought romance. Meeting Tom, a policy advisor. Tentative dates bloomed. He confided in Harlan. Feels wrong. Harlan. Ethan would approve. This fatherly advice cemented their bond. A high-profile interview. Harlan on CNN, discussing change. Grief opened my eyes. Viewers responded hate mail but also thanks from struggling parents. Yet, a setback. Conrad's hospital faced funding cuts from conservative donors upset by his visibility. He fought, testifying in Congress. Discrimination kills. Harlan joined, their united front powerful. As years passed, no months tension built toward a climax. Wait, the story arcs forward. Harlan organized Ethan's memorial gala, inviting all. Ray showed unexpectedly, remorseful after a parishioner's coming out. I was wrong. Reconciliation tentative, but hopeful. Conrad proposed to Tom at the event, ring from Ethan's collection. Cheers erupted. Harlan toasted. To new beginnings. But the night ended with a twist. An anonymous letter accusing Ethan of cowardice in death, fabricated by detractors. Harlan investigated, uncovering a rival's smear. The smear campaign escalated. Online trolls amplifying. Hero? Or fraud hiding behind a skirt? Harlan, fueled by rage, traced it to a former subordinate jealous of Ethan's promotions. With Frank's help, they exposed the lies, suing for defamation. For Ethan's honor, Harlan declared. Conrad supported, but the stress strained his relationship with Tom. This fight never ends, he confided. Tom, we're in it together. Their commitment deepened amid adversity. Margaret authored a book, A Mother's Awakening, sharing their journey. Publishers hesitated, but it sold modestly, inspiring readers. One letter, you saved my family. But critics panned, propaganda. She persevered. Harlan testified in a Senate hearing on military inclusivity. My son's silence cost him peace. Senators debated. Progress slow, but his voice mattered. Personal toll. Harlan's health faltered. High blood pressure from stress. Doctor's orders. Ease up. He retired from speaking, focusing on the foundation. Conrad stepped up as co-chair. A family crisis. Sarah's teen son, Jake, came out. Ray relapsed into judgment. But Harlan mentored Jake. Be proud. This healed old wounds. Conrad and Tom's wedding planning brought joy. Harlan offered to walk Conrad down the aisle. As Ethan's proxy, tears flowed. But doubt crept. Was Harlan's change genuine or grief-driven? He journaled, affirming, it's real. The wedding day, intimate ceremony in Virginia. Vows echoed Ethan's. Harlan's speech, love conquers fear. Ray attended silently, a step forward. Post-honeymoon, Conrad and Tom adopted a child. Naming him Ethan Jr. Harlan grandfathered proudly, spoiling the boy. Society evolved slowly. A Supreme Court case on rights referenced their story. Harlan watched, hopeful. Yet, reflections on costs. Lost friends, family rifts, Ethan's life cut short. Was it worth the hide? Harlan pondered. The foundation thrived, scholarships for LGBTQ service members. One recipient, a young Ethan-like soldier. You give hope, he said. As the story nears end, a final confrontation. Ray at Thanksgiving, apologizing fully. I see now. Family united. But the narrative builds to a provocative close. Years blended, but the echoes of Ethan's death lingered. Harlan, now in his 70s, sat on the porch watching Ethan Jr. play, a spitting image of his namesake. The foundation had grown, impacting thousands. Conrad, graying but vibrant, visited often with Tom and the boy. Margaret baked pies, her book a bestseller in niche circles. One evening, Harlan pulled Conrad aside. Did I do enough? Conrad smiled. More than most. They reminisced. Ethan's humor, his bravery not just in battle but in love. A new challenge. Ethan Jr. faced bullying at school for having two dads. Harlan, echoing his past self, wanted to confront. But Conrad taught restraint. Educate, not fight. They spoke at the school assembly, sharing their story. Kids listened, some minds changed. Ray, fully reformed, preached inclusivity now. God's love is boundless. His church split, but the remnant thrived. Harlan's memoir, From Denial to Devotion, sparked debates. Conservatives decried, progressives praised. TV appearances followed. Harlan unflinching. Change hurts, but stagnation kills. Conrad's career peaked. Head of surgery, advocating for queer health. Tom lobbied for policies, their family a beacon. But introspection hit during a quiet anniversary at the grave. Harlan whispered, "Forgive me, son." Conrad added, "We honor you." The story culminates in a gala honoring Ethan. Speeches flowed, but Harlan's final words, "Love demands sacrifice. Ethan paid dearly, we must not." As guests mingled, Ethan Jr. asked, "Was Grandpa Ethan happy?" Harlan, "In his way, yes, but freer now through us." The night ended with a dance. Conrad and Tom swaying, Harlan with Margaret. Joy amid sorrow. Yet, the tale leaves a lingering question. In a world of evolving norms, was Ethan's hidden life a tragic necessity, or could bold truth have saved more pain? Was it right for Ethan to hide his truth from his family, or did his silence ultimately cause more harm than good?